Okay.
Okay.
So are we supposed to click leave meeting then?
No.
Yeah.
Depends upon what you're going to say.
Well, this is Johnathan Fletcher. We've had this group for 13 years now, and so I'm stepping down. But I would like to recognize a few people. First of all, anybody who's ever come. Everybody who's ever participated in our meetings. It's been an awesome time, and we appreciate you having joined us in IRL, as my daughter says, in real life, or virtually. But I want to point out three people. So first of all, in this group, we have Brian Ginn, who was there at the beginning, and he was one of the original team that we researched some other user groups and figured out how to get ours going. And very quickly, Alan Bird jumped in and offered an awesome venue to have our monthly lunch meetings, our bring your own brown bag meetings. And we had an awesome time of fellowship there. And Alan has since left town. I don't know if it's one step ahead of the shotgun or what, but he now lives in Columbia, and has moved his data center down there. But Alan does the registration and all the stuff you see. That's the nuts and bolts of our operation, and so I appreciate his support over all these years. And then the new person, Ron Cates, has graciously volunteered. He is the latest Claris partner in Kentucky, and he's been a developer for a long time, but just starting to be an independent now, doing independent stuff on the side, and he's become a Claris partner. And so he comes to us with years and years of FileMaker experience. It just hasn't been with a lot of different companies. But he is extremely sharp, and enjoy his company. And he has just agreed to take over the group, and I really appreciate him for that. I have done it for a long time, and I figure it's time to let somebody younger take it over. So that's why I didn't ask Stephen Gallagher. But
Do we have to bend a knee now to Ron, or?
yes, all the genuflecting you did in my presence now should be directed to Ron. So anyway, so I thank everybody, and I'm going to still participate. I'm going to still hang around. Hopefully I'll shut up a little bit more than I have in the past. So, but anyway, take it away, Ron.
Thank you, Johnathan. And I hope you don't shut up, because I'm going to need some help. Yeah, so as Johnathan said, I have many years of FileMaker experience, but not a lot of years of experience in the community and being part of the community and getting to know all you wonderful people. I'm just starting to meet new people and branch out like that. I first came to this meeting about a year and a half ago, fell in love with it and haven't missed one since. And when we had the in-person meeting in December, and I had thought one of these days I would like to be involved with this group and be part of putting it on and everything. And then Johnathan surprised us with his plans to step down, and I did not expect to be so involved so quickly. So it's kind of a trial by fire going on. So hopefully we'll be able to make the best of it, and we'll keep this thing moving. It was kind of a thing that happened in December where it was posed that, possibly the group might end unless somebody stepped up. And so here I am. So I'm just a humble servant I'm just here to make sure the door stays open and we can keep exploring FileMaker together. We had some discussions in December about what we wanted to do with the group this year. And as you read in the announcement, one of the things that we decided and kind of posed the idea and decided we're moving forward with is Alan's going to start us off each month with kind of FileMaker 101. We just wanted to get back to basics. We'd like to make sure that anybody joining this group, whether they're an advanced developer or beginning developer, the beginning developer is sometimes our topics go way over their heads, and it's hard to get involved and participate when we're dealing with things that are way over our heads. So we're going to kind of break it up. Alan's going to start each group off with a new project that we're going to start from the ground up and make that a continuing project each month and continue with it each group. And then the second half of the group, we're going to continue to try and bring guest presenters and new ideas and whatever we can bring in to keep this exciting. So that being said, I'm about to turn it over to Alan, but after Alan finishes today, what we're going to do is open it up for discussion, because we really need some input from you guys on what you'd like to see this year. Suggestions on people to present, topics to talk about, things that we'd like to explore. So maybe be thinking about that, and we'll discuss that after Alan's part of the meeting. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alan and let him take the show.
Let's see if we can get screen sharing here.
I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody for now, just to make sure we're all muted, and you guys can certainly unmute as you if you want to comment.
Of course.
Sorry, Alan, I muted you as well. You'll have
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. There we go.
Okay, I'm not sure what you guys are seeing.
Seeing a notes2.txt with some links on it.
Yeah, that's the wrong screen. How do we, so this doesn't let me do the whole desktop, it's just one screen at a time?
It should give you options to choose either a window or a screen, I think, doesn't it, Jonathan?
It's about the application. At least when I click share screen, it comes up and shows the
It shows me all my different windows, but not the whole screen.
Isn't the first option the whole screen?
Well, it won't show you multiple screens. It only shows you one screen at a time.
Oh.
So you just
Okay.
have to pick which of your screens you want to put everything on.
Okay, so what we've got here is, so when I looked at this, one of the things is there's a big discussion I had at a university program years ago regarding training versus education. And this is not going to be training from my perspective. And what the difference is training to me is how it works. In other words, there's a number of places that provide the training. FileMaker has certified trainers and that type of stuff. And what that tells you how the function works, how the behind the scenes work. If you want to create a field, what buttons you push to make it happen. And that's extremely valuable. In fact, I took on-site training for a whole week at Soliant up in Chicago. I mean, and learned a great deal. So when I first started out, that was extremely important. But what they don't cover is how to use it. And that's what to me is what education is about. And so you've got the tools, like, a hammer hits a nail, but when do you use a hammer, or what do you use a nail versus a screw, or what type? That's what I was sort of going to go into. Little bit of background here. This is my 39th year as an independent software developer. When we started out was in, paper tape, so it goes way back before digital. And then, but I first got into FileMaker in 88 and really started getting into it in 89 and full-time developer in 95. So been a few years at this. And what I found out is over the years is I go back and look at some of the older stuff. I went, how in the, why did I do it that way? And what I've come up with is sort of a different way of doing things. And so what I want to do is sort of go over the basics of how I approach it in building a solution. And I thought what I do is we go through some of it. But first of all, I need to sort of explain what my philosophy is of building. Otherwise, it's not going to make a lot of sense. If anybody has followed me on some of my solutions, you pretty well know that I have a policy. 6 buttons or 3 clicks should get you where you want to go. I love it looking at people give me an Excel spreadsheet and it's filled full of stuff. Where do you start? What do you do? That's great if you really have built that solution yourself. But if you're an independent person or a novice trying to figure out what to do, it's not easy to do it. So my philosophy is I try to stick with this 6 buttons on a screen or 6 options, you know, basically. And once you start within 3 clicks, you should be where you need to go. And that's really, really hard to accomplish a lot of times. And I probably spend more time building things, trying to figure out how to narrow it down to that. And obviously there's exceptions to the rules sometimes, but it's really what I try. My goal is to do that. And I think if you take a look at some of the FileMaker solutions that for example, when you registered for this event, you click on a link, you put in your email address, boom, and you're there. You didn't have to go through 15 different screens. However, you know, behind the scenes, if it did not recognize your email address, it popped you to a screen where you filled out the information, but it saved it for going in the future. Johnathan said we've been at this for now going on 13 years. I just looked, we have over 302 individual people that have been into the system, which is sort of neat. But that goes back to, I only believe you only have to enter information once. That's, you know, sort of the basics of FileMaker. So going on to that, what I'm going to do is sort of walk through sort of my standards. And just so that these are Allen standards, these are not FileMaker standards. I mean, if you give one scope of concept to 7 different people that are in FileMaker, you're going to get 7 different solutions. We all know that. We're all going to approach it a little bit differently. So I'm just going to approach it how I do it. And then we, as a group, I'd like to, you know, we can tear it apart and go forward with it. But what I found out over the years is when I go into a client for the very first time, I don't take in even a computer. Well, I take a computer to show them what I've done, but I don't use it to diagnose what they want to do. I use pencil and paper. And I actually learned that from one of the FileMaker sessions at DevCon years ago. And they said, start out with, you know, writing it out. People, you know, use Post-it notes, sticky tapes, that type of stuff. So people are more comfortable with that, because as soon as you start, if you walk into a meeting and you're developing a scope and you start immediately doing it on a computer, it's almost putting it down in hard copy. I mean, nowadays we use maybe a tablet to take notes, but the idea of trying to build it while you're still talking to them, that's not giving a free flow to the client. And that's what you really want to do. So that's what I'll do. But now behind the scenes, what I thought I'd do is I thought I would go through and actually look at my core file that I start with. What happens if I'm going to build a new solution, I'll normally start with my immediate core file and go from there. So let me pull up the core file. You know, can I? If you notice, the first thing it did is it gave you the logo of the background. To me, that's part of navigation because it confirms to the client or whoever opening it that they're at the right place. So that goes back to ease and confirmation all the time.
I
So
think we
right
lost
here,
the screen share, Alan.
Screen share, how do we do this? Is it there?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if you saw the initial sequence,
I
but what
don't
it
think we
does,
did.
okay, let's try that again then. Well, no, it may happen because you're not sharing the screen and FileMaker opens up another window. So that may not be why it's
Yeah,
switched
that's
off on us. Yeah.
that's probably why we lost the screen share. Yeah.
I'm more familiar with GoToMeeting where you actually share the whole screen. And so
Yeah,
I've got multiple screens. And so I was going to actually show a screen and pull things back and forth. I have to learn this one. Okay. But what it is so normally what I'll do on a solution is I'll go to what I call a landing page, an opening page. And let's see if it won't even let me get there. Okay. Okay, so this would be the second page. The first page would normally be a logo, just it's a 1 second landing of this is the file that you're getting into. For simplicity's sake, on this one, immediately goes to a login page. And Johnathan helped me build this years ago. And it's really, really now probably our primary core, because what it does is it lets me really control what I want to do. Did we lose the screening? No, we didn't. There you go. There's automatic resizing to the window. Because what it does is it takes me to my home page. This tells me who logged in, what level they've got, and it gives an access number. And what that does is it lets me turn things on and off based upon what it is. So again, here's 6 buttons. This is the start page to get going with the contact list, everything else, but it's sort of the landing page for the admin person. If I came in not as an admin person, but at a different level, it would take me to a different one. So what I do is I actually track whatever they do, but it's all based upon that first initial login page, which is just the user. But then it tells me, like, as the admin person here, what time zone this is going to be based upon, if it's a PIN entry or it's a username, password. I mean, these are different things that this is the key for how this is set up. And the thing is, I set this up on a file setup page. So I can change all those things right here. I can have the startup method being an email login or a mobile phone number. It can be a PIN method, or it can be by password. How many digits is it? So it's a 4-digit PIN, a 6-digit PIN. I can make that however many or few as I want. If I email a PDF, is it going to be locked? If there's a universal password, unlock it. These are just different things that you turn on and off. I mean, if I switch it time zones, just easy enough to do it, because we do solutions all over the country and we have to fly all the time. So that's how we do that. The other is then here's my automatic links for different access. So this would be my web direct one for the general public. This would be one for the staff. So that if they are come in, log in, it'll actually take them to a different part. And this is sort of a fun one down here, is because I'll have people fill out a form on some other solution and it emails me. If they put it in this configuration, it automatically populates, creates a new form, fills it out, puts it in. And but those are all links just set up on the file setup page again. And if I had to do multiple languages, I just click them over here. So this is how my SMTP server. So all my settings are on a single page. And how this works, and this goes back to my standards. is, you know, I'm a core global, which is tied to everything. And I just use a one-to-one relationship. Everything has created a field with a number 1 in it. And that's how it's all tied together. So it's an ID, and it goes down to the ID, which would be here. That's how it's tied together. And if you look at it, my core global field will only have 1 record. It's only allowed to have 1 record. And so it's that way, if I put a logo in or something like that, it automatically changes up throughout the whole system.
Is that like a session screen that you delete each night and recreate each day, or?
No, what this is, this is usually the hard code behind the scenes. This is set it up so that if I take this core, I build it up and I set it and it's done. The client, based upon what their knowledge is, I'll let them have access to this or not.
Mm-hmm. How do you enforce 1 record, I guess, is what ultimately my question is, Alan.
Oh, it's only, it's actually fairly easy. What you do is manage database, you go to the core global fields, make it an ID, options, has it at a 1, is required, it can't be duplicated.
Oh, clever.
So it's only a 1. I learned this back at a DevCon back in the early 90s. I was at a session because what happened is we have to do registration where we're printing from a computer to a specific printer. The trick is how do you identify which printer it goes to when I've got 100 computers and 40 printers? How did you direct that? I remember going and talking to the people at the tech meetings, you can talk to them, and they said it can't be done. Well, the guys at PC computing, what is that? The brothers, like personal computing.
La Rochelle.
Yeah.
Productive computing.
Productive computing. We sat at a picnic table at one of their luncheons, and they said, wait a minute, what if you put a separate file on each computer with the same number? And that's how we did it. And I've been using that solution ever since. And so that's how we were able to pull off identifying how it works. But that really concept started from that. So in my relationship, so all of these have a single field. If you look at it in the like users, they'll always have this number, and it can't be modified, and that's how it works. So that's what ties it together. But that way I can share. I do not have to have it as a global field to change. So if I take this logo and I put something else in it, it'll change it because that's the logo that shows up here, and also on every other page of the whole solution. So I change it once and it changes throughout the whole system. I can duplicate a file and launch it again if it's similar to it within literally minutes. And that's literally like right now we've got 35 different events going for VAX verification. And I launch those within minutes, a couple times a day. And that's how we're able to pull it off. So because of that, I was sort of wanting to go through, that's why my core is as sort of locked as it could be. But I wanted to go over just some of my, I guess, the nomenclature. And Johnathan and Brian both have seen these things behind the scenes. I'm pretty consistent over every one of my tables always starts with a 2-letter code. So I can tell where it came from. You can see each one starts at the beginning. So except for barcode creator, because that created by somebody else, there's my contacts. And so that when I then build my relationships, or I have a field on a layout, I know exactly where it's coming from. And that's why by using the anchor buoy system, it makes it real easy to do that. And all my major tables are all caps. And so my relationships, the lowercase is how it's a connector. And my last one, I don't do the color coding like a lot of people do. It's just, I keep it this way. So that when I look at it, my tables are all capitalized. My fields are usually upper and lowercase after they come with, so I know where it comes from. So that's just sort of my standardized way of doing things, but it's helped me be able to move pretty quickly from one thing to another. I do let's see, what are my notes? The other is consistency of navigation. If anybody looks at this solution and looks at ones for the department store or from any other, it's pretty much the same. The upper left-hand corner is always a home button, no matter where I go. If I go to that, it'll always be able to get me back to home. So when I'm in training, it makes it real easy to say, if you get lost, use your home button. It'll always take you back there. These are your 6 buttons, but this is where I had to, if you have to do something different, I'll use my option bar up here. This is where I'm able to do certain things, but this is also where I can turn things on and off. If you notice here, you can see user lists. So there's my user list. And this is how I control how many users a file is allowed to have. If I have a license for a client for 10 users, it'll only let them put in 10 here. As they try to add the 11th one, it says, too many. So that I don't know if it's officially legal according to FileMaker's user license, but I strictly control it. So I never have more people available to a solution. That way I don't have to give them access into the security, but it makes it real easy for them to change the level that they're able to access to. So if you notice up here, it says I'm signed in as a developer and I've got a level of 9. Now, if I use this PIN number, I go back to home, log out, I log back in, get back to resize the screen again. If you notice it's changed, now I'm an admin, I'm a level 6, I can't get to the user list anymore. So behind these scenes, I can turn things on and off based upon their user number, saying if this is a whatever the number is, and these are $$ variables is how I use that. So however I move through the system makes it real easy. And then if I just want to be able to then go back in, just by logging in differently. So it makes it real easy. Behind the scenes, I'm also logging the access. So it just showed the time I logged in, the time I logged out. So I build a history of people using the system. I don't track necessarily where they went in the system, but I can tell when they logged in. So that's just some of the standard things that I do. Let's see. Oh.
I have a quick question, Alan.
Yeah.
On that user log where it has time in and time out, how are you capturing that? And the question is, like, I have a user log similar that logs in, that captures when somebody logs in and when they log out, but I haven't found a solution for when they close out of WebDirect.
That is a problem, and there is no way to do it. Now what I try and do on my WebDirect is it goes back to giving feedback. If I don't know if I've got it on here. On most of my pages, start. I don't know. If I hit exit, that'll actually, if I have an exit button on the page, it'll actually log them out at that point.
Yeah.
So in WebDirect, it has to be a function. It can't do it by itself. Otherwise,
can't
I
just
can't
close
force
the
it.
window. Yeah.
No. And it's the only way able to do it.
Can't you have a script on a layout that activates on last window open or last window close?
I do have that. I do have that on, and it works great if you're using an iPad but on WebDirect, it just times out. It doesn't work that way. And I don't know why.
I don't know. I've got a blog that I'm using in WebDirect. I'll have to take a look at it and see.
But it's the logging out one where that I'm not able to capture. I can do logging in all the time, but not logging out.
On last window,
On last
close?
window close.
It doesn't
Because-
activate a script in WebDirect?
No, it doesn't.
No.
Hmm.
File.
That's been my experience as well.
Yeah. So this is my closing script file shutdown. And on the solution in the beginning, I've got, last window close, it runs this script. It doesn't run this at all. It does close my window, but it doesn't run the final script. And if there's a solution, this is why I found these FileMaker groups so valuable. All of a sudden, someone says, "Ooh, do this," and it works. And I've solved so many solutions by using this group. I just hope I can share a little bit of what I'm doing to help you guys. Okay, let's see what we got. How do I share? New share. Okay, so we've got, the tables, the fields, I'm very consistent on how I name things. It makes it easier. So that way my navigation, and the other part is on navigation, you keep it simple, can keep it consistent throughout the whole solution, but you also have to give them feedback. If you notice on, on all my buttons, you can always tell where you're at. Just because, so that admin home, so that you know where you are. You're giving you feedback to the client, where they're hovering over to. If they push the button, it'll change colors. And to me, that's important, just so that it's consistent. And it makes it, I think, a much more professional solution. When FileMaker really started getting into the ability to make those changes, has really been the major game changer for me. And and I've got this is all standardized. My theme is, I've got pretty complex one, but it's worked out well. Makes it real easy because all I have to do, there's all my different combinations. I just have to pull them over. And this, again, is part of my core. So if how I want to do it. And the reason this all says the word calculation, because this is a multi-language solution. So that if I just pick another language, it puts it in whatever language it needs to be. Browse. And let me layout. Go to home. Copy. Admin home. So if I, boom. So it just makes it real easy to switch solutions for different languages, whatever the case is.
Alan,
that's
I'm
how-
just curious, do you do the languages using global variables, or do you have a language dictionary table? What's your method there?
It is with repeating fields. I probably should have gotten back to English before I did that.
Yeah, there is that.
Now, not everything will switch based upon what the client does. Admin. And they go into language file. So what is, here it is in the different languages. And what I do is I just go to Google and I drop in whatever is required. So what happens is if they log in under Spanish, it says, okay, just give me always only work in level 2. It's a real simple solution of being able to do multiple languages. Now, see, this is where, I'll just take and copy this, take it over to Google, drop it into that, and it gives me the different languages I need to put into it. The only trick you've got is when you get into Arabic and Hebrew, it's got to read right to left versus left to right. So there's a separate container that does it in the reverse order.
So as you're building a solution, you add more rows to this table here and then do the translation.
Yeah, but see,
Okay.
what happens is most of the time, if this is just, see, I'll just have to change it. But this, if you're doing a static one for like my department store, they only have English and Spanish, so it's pretty easy, and those don't change.
Mhm.
And on this solution, this is pretty much the same thing always. But now if they change language, if he's only going to show English and Spanish, he's not going to bother changing it over here. They just
Sure.
stay stagnant. But it lets the client make the changes. One of the things I try and build is I build the core, but I don't want the client to call me at 2 o'clock in the morning to say, can you make this word change? I let them do that as much as humanly possible. And so gets into more of the text, the email responses. I mean, it changes it on the web direct, on the emails and everything else. It's, pretty robust. Okay, so I got off tangent on that one, but so anyway, that's your feedback that I'm really keen on giving to it. So it makes it pretty easy to do. Let's see what's on the next on the list here. Okay, so what I thought I would do is this flipping screens is a pain. Okay, so if we're going to build something as a team, that's all the background. What we want to do is, okay, we have to look at what the project scope is. We all sort of agreement on it. And I thought what we do is just sort of come up with somewhat we want to sort of build as a scope. And we build it from. One is approximately 10 employees. In other words, a small business. So we're not building it for a large one, but it's not for a single user either. And what we're going to build based upon what the client wants us to do is it's a customer management module. And sitting down with the initial client for the first time, and we say, okay, what do you want to do? The other is he wants to be able to use it for his desktop as well as mobile devices. He's got some salespeople out in the field. So we'll have to make sure the layouts work accordingly. And I've got a couple major tricks on how we're going to pull that one off, make it easier. But the customer is not just a single customer, because that customer may have multiple people's inside. So we've got to be able to handle multiple contacts for a single client. So we'll have to build that into the system as well. Customer contact history. we'll want to have history of if a client calls in, how often have we contacted them? Those type of things. So we'll do that. And the other is he wants to be able to send out bulk notifications if they're going to be closed because of weather or got a special coming up. So these are the initial project scopes that the client has said he wants to do. Now, the thing is I never leave it at that. And that's because we all know that these solutions never are done. I mean, every time you get something and say, oh, can I do this? Can I do this? And so I'm pretty specific in what my initial contract is. I write it out saying exactly this is what we're going to do. But I also talk about what he wants to do in the future, because that way I make sure I build my hooks into it, or in my thinking process, I build it with this in mind. I won't initially put it in, but I can pull it off. In the future, the guy wants to do an online catalog. So that means I'm gonna have to be able to do products and that type of stuff. Wants to be able to do ordering. So, that means we'll have to build something in where, someone signs it as a contact, but it's got to pull the customer number. So we know I have to have verification on that. And he wants to have some sales order management so that he can say, what's the status of that order? I remember visiting the advertising agency once, and they had this FileMaker solution, and they said, the president of the company says, it works just great for us. But you went back into the sales area and looked, and they had 100 Post-it notes all around their computer with all the shortcuts they had to use to get it to work. I went, yeah, and what was it? If someone called in from the field and says, what's the status of my project? They would always take a message and say, we'll call you back, and then would run around trying to figure out what the status is. Once we finished with it, we built it a project management system where whoever answered the phone could tell them exactly where the project was in process. That's the way it should be. But you have to sort of build that with that in mind. So that's what my goal is. So that's sort of where I wanted to start, but I don't think we'll actually get into doing a lot of the building today other than with a core. And what I was going to do is I'll actually build a core that will start with that next month. We'll actually start building the pieces into it from a core. And what I wanted to do is eventually share the core with everybody and giving them a lot of trade secrets away. But this is all part of, I think, why this group has worked so well the last 13 years. We've all been willing to share. Some of the groups I think are very non-sharing. I don't know. I'm sure there's a reverse word for that. Because in the FileMaker world, we have to learn so much of it ourselves, and that we just say, "Oh, I'm not going to give that away." But on the other hand, once you start sharing, I find out it grows so much faster. And my business could not be the way it is today if it wasn't for this group. I mean, I've got to thank everybody who's participated over the years, because it's really changed the way I've done things and I've approached things. And so I'm going to try and give it back a little bit to what it is. Originally, I had planned to do some major training, and I actually wrote a syllabus and everything else. And we were going to actually start it because the new facility we're building in Columbia, by the way, it's Columbia, Kentucky, anybody. It's not Columbia, the country. So when Johnathan said I moved to Columbia, it wasn't the country. We're building a training area. Both my wife and I both do training, and so we were going to do that, but with pandemic, it sort of got put on hold. So we don't know if it'll ever get off the ground or not. I thought about trying to do it online, but I just haven't got there yet. But anyway, so that's where we're sort of at. And I would like to now open it up. So is there any additional things in the scope that we think should be put into this initial one?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just regarding kind of something I do as a standard for my apps and everything, and I'm not sure if I'm overdoing or not overdoing it. When it comes to contacts, and say a company can have multiple contacts, a company can also have multiple phone numbers, multiple emails. A contact can have multiple phone numbers, multiple emails. I found myself kind of backing myself into a corner with some solutions where I provided that capability instead of, like it's kind of a common standard of like 2 phone number fields and 1 email field. And one of my base client, former employer, has been asking me forever and has commented many times, like, we need to, occasionally we need to put in more than 1 email or a 3rd phone number. So I started building solutions with a separate table for phone numbers, emails, things like that. Is that common practice for anybody else, or is that just people tend to accept that there's only a couple fields for phone numbers?
Yeah, Ron, I tried what they call the party model, and that gets a little more complex. It works really beautifully in SQL, and there's a few more hoops when you try to do it in FileMaker. And so I tried to do like a hybrid, what I call an attributes table. So if there's here's a contact, what's their attributes? Well, here's their city, here's their state, here's their phone, work phone, or whatever kind of qualifier I need to put on that phone number to make it a particular kind of attribute. Hours that you can call, anything like that becomes an attribute. And then that way you're not really creating fields as much as you are having a related table of these values. And now that we're into JSON, then that's kind of really that thought process too. You don't necessarily have to have every field filled. And same way with this attributes table, you don't have to have some information on some context just because you don't have it. And so, it's not like having to create a related record and have an empty value ready to fill kind of thing. You just fill it when you're ready to add that to that contact. And so that's kind of one idea I've been trying to work on a little bit more. Just
Beverly,
as a suggestion.
That's exactly what I do. I use a table called exactly that, attributes. And then there's different kinds of attributes, be it an address or a phone number or an email. So that's exactly what I do. The thing that I'm kind of getting to is that, as I'm building a solution and using Anchor Buoy, now I've got to build that relationship to phone numbers and emails, that just additional management of those additional relationships to the attributes table.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at, is if you've got it stored that way, you're only relating to the attributes for that contact. And if you then kind of do something JSON like, you're just querying that particular attribute. You don't necessarily need to do everything. For a report, you're just getting that information, putting in the report. It doesn't necessarily have to be a field that you're displaying at that point in time, unless it is, you have a list of contacts in their phone. Well, which phone do you choose? Does your attribute say that it is a primary phone? That kind of thing. You just build that in there so that you have just storage of data that essentially is, like form fields and what the value is, but instead of 10 million fields, you really just have an attribute and a value, and then whatever that key is.
And that sounds like essentially what I'm doing. So for instance, if you look at a contact, there's a portal of phone numbers, and there's a portal of email addresses. You can add multiples and things like that. So but in order to affect that portal, I have to do one relationship, and then the attribute has a type. Is it a phone number? Is it an email? And so now I've got like 2 table occurrences, one for phone number, which is linked by type, and then one for email that's linked by type as email. And so there's 2 more table occurrences and 2 more relationships that I'm managing from every perspective that I need to get that information.
Yeah, that sounds more like the party model.
Yeah, and I do think something that's worth exploring might be a JSON option for being able to have access to that information. So anyway, just a thought on whether it's worth the extra effort to build it out like that, or because as I said, I've seen many solutions where it's just simply a contact has 2 phone number fields and an email field, and that just seems to be the accepted standard. So
I'm a firm believer in keep it simple. And I've got a simple solution to that. It's repeating fields. It all depends on what you want to do, because you could easily have 10 repeating fields for the phone number. And if you do a search on that phone number, it'll look through all 10 levels to bring back the record. Now, if you want to call the different numbers, that's a different solution. But if you just want to be able to say, if someone calls in, you wanted to pull up the right file. For example, on a telephone system where it's tied into FileMaker and it calls in on the ring thing says, okay, here's the number. If I've tied it to that person, it'll pull up his record, no matter which number he's used to call in on. And that's just an easy way of doing it, because you don't have to build a relationship or anything else. And there, I just limit the customer and say, okay, how many maximum do you want to have this set to? Whether it be 3, 4, 5, whatever the case is, and that's just the way it is. And that's really let me get out of that solution of having to build a separate table and all the relationships to go with it. It's just the way I've handled it.
Mhm.
I go with kind of in between. I don't quite go the one table for every piece of data like Beverly was talking about. I usually have an addresses table and then a contact methods table. The contact methods table will have a category and then calculations that format whatever data you enter in the value, whether it be a phone number, an email address, or whatever. But on things that I create, I almost never will go with fixed fields. So occasionally I'll end up with something where I'll have got 2 address fields, but most of the time I insist on having a separate table, because somebody is going to say, oh, we need another address, regardless of how ever many they say they're going to have. They say, oh, we would never use more than 10 of that. Yeah, till they do 11. So
Mhm.
just go ahead and make it a table, and you never have to worry about that again.
Yeah, type of value, etc. Hey, Alan,
Yeah.
and I guess I should ask Ron's permission. I wonder if I could tell a joke to help clarify the difference between training and education. Would that be okay, Ron? Or
No objection from me.
And I noticed you were struggling, seemed to be struggling with that a little bit, the difference between training and education at the beginning. And this is based on a true story. I joined Apple in '84, and in '92, up until I joined FileMaker in '93, I was working for a VC-funded company out of Palo Alto that had taken a spreadsheet and connected a fully relational database to it. And it was pretty powerful. And I was doing a presentation up at TRW's headquarters in Cleveland, Ohio, which are world-class. Their headquarters were just as nice as Apple's were at the time. And I'm talking to some people in the C-suite about, gosh, as soon as we get your employees trained on the value of relational databases and get them educated on all these concepts, they'll be able to build financial models that allow you to build forecasting models that are superior to your strung together spreadsheets. And this woman, vice president, looked at me, and she looked at me and she said, Mr. Gallagher, I'm vice president of education for all of TRW, and that includes their satellites division, their automotive parts division. And I noticed you're commingling the words education and training. And I kind of shrugged and said, yes, ma'am, I am. And she said, do you have daughters? And I said, well, yes, I do. I have 4 daughters, and I'm very proud of all my daughters. They're very accomplished commercial pilots, Fulbright scholars. They just do amazing things. And she said, well, since you're commingling commingling education and training, would you rather them go to sex training or sex education class? And I said, I think education might be better than sex training. So
I don't know about anybody else, but I laughed. I was muted, so you couldn't hear it, but I got a kick out of that one. So. Alan, on another note, I did want to mention, I quickly looked up to try and figure out with Zoom on the screen sharing, and apparently it's a new function that they introduced like last year or not too long ago, that you can disable desktop sharing and limit it only to sharing the window at the apps like you're restricted to today. As far as I can tell, though, the meetings, my account is set up to allow the desktop sharing, but for some reason it's not allowing it. So I'm going to dig in and research that and figure that out so that we can make sure that that's resolved by next month.
It's a learning process.
Yep.
Yeah, great. But that's sort of where we're at on this. I mean, do we want to add anything else on the initial scope of this? So as we build, and then what I'll do is I'll actually put on our website a place where so that we'll build a repository for this. So we move forward, we can play with it.
cool.
On the bulk emailing, my question also would be is, just individual email functionality, for instance, emailing a single invoice to a customer on request, or emailing a brochure, or just, being able to just fire off an email. Is that something that is incorporated with that, or is the bulk email something different than?
To me, yeah. Individual emailing, like if you're sending an invoice, that type of stuff, that's pretty much standard. That's to me just part of customer management.
Okay.
But bulk emailing is when you want to actually send, like we're doing re-verification of Vax cards, and we did over 30,000 last week. Each one had to be an individual PDF document. I mean, that's a little bit different monster because it's something you want to run on a server. But again, for feedback at the end, you want to be able to notify the client, this is how many were sent, but it also has to go through an email verification that they're valid emails and that type of stuff. So you don't get a lot of bounce backs. But that's the bulk email is a little bit different monster than just a regular email notification. I guess there's really two parts to that. So project scope would include automatically email part of it, but bulk email is, I think, is a little bit higher level.
Okay. And in the scope of this is compatibility with WebDirect part of the scope to try and make sure that
because
everything
again, mobile devices, WebDirect, it doesn't list it, but I would, absolutely. It was sort of, I guess what it is, I build everything WebDirect.
Yeah, I do too nowadays, because it seems.
And
like
so, we'll definitely have it WebDirect compatible. One of the things I do, if you notice, like on my login pages, that type of stuff, I'll go back over here to sharing. Share. And this is, when it scales down, will actually work on a phone. So what I do is I actually build this whole screen based upon a phone. And so, in fact, I have to thank Beverly for this. When we went to virtual, she was complaining about the fact of trying to register on her phone because her other layout was too big. And so I switched it. And so now made it smaller, more compact, but it's for registering for this event. You don't need to get into any of the rest of the stuff. You don't need to have the other layouts other than you put in a number, you put in your email address, it comes up with a confirmation. Yeah, I want to attend. Boom, you hit the button and it sends it. So my WebDirect core is based upon an iPhone. So I really only have to build one set of layouts just for that, which makes it real easy to do a launch. And make sure you put exit buttons on these type of things. But
yeah, I found that it seems like now currently, I mean, you pretty much everything has to be built WebDirect with the demand for mobile access or
right.
remote access, with the demand for, and just can't we log in using a web browser? Like for years I had heard that and finally got up to speed on WebDirect for everybody. And that's just, it's kind of a given expected nowadays. But there are definitely some challenges that come up along with that I'd be interested to see how we get through. Because speaking of emails, like emailing from WebDirect, it's no problem until you want to attach a document. Then you've got to send it to the server, and then you can't save to the temp file on the server if it's like a PDF, you know, if you're not just printing a PDF, if you're actually exporting a file so that you can attach it, you can't save it to the temp file unless you use a plugin like Base Elements. So I've run into, you know, just a lot of challenges. It's just kind of foremost on my mind today, because then after having a beautiful solution worked out to be able to send both WebDirect or through FileMaker and attach multiple files and PDFs, then I find that the spam filters are killing me. You know, if I've got emails that are arriving, if they've got no attachment, but the same email, if I attach an invoice PDF to it, it goes to the spam folder, or one other email, it just never arrives at all. So that was something I was thinking maybe we can explore as a topic in upcoming months, of maybe seeing if we can find some solutions to some common email problems with emailing out of FileMaker. So
one of you brought up a real good point, and I have found out is, since we do so much in bulk email, unless I'm attaching a document, I do everything in plain text, just because as soon as it goes into HTML with any logos, that type of stuff, so many systems are blocking it, because you know, people can hide a virus in an image, and that's the problem. So, I mean, like on my phone and that type of stuff, on my laptop, everything, I won't open any image. So unless I know who it's coming from, I never see it. So I just use the same philosophy with everybody I use. It sends it in plain text document.
So one of the things that has come up and with my main client and everything is, you know, we all see emails coming to us from big companies and stuff like that. They come in with beautiful HTML formatting and even images included. And he's like, can we do that? And I'm like, I don't think we can do that out of FileMaker, because I don't know any way to send that HTML with the image without having it be, you know, blocked, or having it be, I think you have to turn on show images. I mean, I imagine there's ways to embed the image right in the document, things like that. So it's just stuff that has come up in my experience where I'm not sure how to accomplish those. I can send an HTML email, but not including any images. So
In FileMaker, you can do that. No, you are able to do it, but you run into the problem of if their browsers is going to block an image, no matter how you send it, you know, that client who says, "Oh, I would like to be able to see it." Yeah, but if that same big email went to someone else who blocks their images, it'd be the same problem. It's
right.
They're only looking at it from the receiving end. You have to look at it at the sending end, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't allow images to come in automatically.
No.
I limit the size that are shown, and I have to click on the show me for
Yep.
anything, attachments or images.
I have a separate computer that I use just for email. I mean, we host, 300 domains, and I'm the postmaster for all that shit. And so the spam that comes in is unbelievable. And last time I checked, there's 1.2 million filters on that server, and it's it's all it does. And it won't let any images go through unless I know who it is and bring it through separately.
Yeah, it sounds about right. We used Barracuda when I was a hosting company, and same thing, millions and millions that just automatically were stopped before it ever got out to clients.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you don't have to include the image in the HTML. All you do is include a link, and it will go and get the image and display it. So you can keep your email smaller that way if you have to have images in them.
Can images be in base 64 and come through?
Yeah, but it balloons the size of your file though significantly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother challenge.
Email by default, if you put an image in an email, it comes across as base 64 automatically. If you ever look at the raw email, you'll see that, and it'll have the content type
Right.
listed. And
Oh,
it's,
that's true. That's
it's,
true.
it's pretty cool if you look at it.
So it's basically
it's
pulling over
based-
from the link and
Yeah.
encoding it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the email is 7-bit, not 8-bit. So it can't show binary files.
So do the big boys do it by linking to a content server that serves the
Yeah.
images via a URL?
Yes. You'll notice that a lot in your emails, like they won't come in.
And see, that's where the problem is, because that URL could be linked to a virus. So that's
Right.
why a lot of people are blocking it.
And they also track you that way too.
Yeah.
They know if you access that image that you're a live person.
I thought the internet was free and open.
Free only means you're the customer. I mean, I'm sorry, that you're the product. You're not the customer, you're the product.
Yeah, I'm looking at an email, just, a random email in my email that's like capital 1. And, they've got this beautiful email with HTML formatting and little icon images and all kinds of stuff in there. And it's, I guess, yeah, I'm just not sure how they're doing it. Or
Well, you could tell if you pull the plug on your internet connection while the email is still there, then it can't go and get those images.
okay.
So you'll see it as if you had it set for don't show images, even though if you did, but it can't go get the images because you don't have an internet connection. So that's how you tell.
And can all that be done to where you have a text alternative that if they have don't show images or something turned on, then it would just automatically go to plain text?
Yeah,
If they set up the email, they're supposed to set up both. So if you look at a raw email, the content type, it's supposed to have a plain version and a stylized HTML version. If they do it right, but most people don't bother to do that. And it's supposed to have an alternative for accessibility too. And again, most people don't bother to do that.
what's the HTML command for that, Beverly?
For what?
When you put a alt text underneath there, what's it called?
In the
Like
image?
when you list an image and then you put in alt text, what's it called?
I think it's just alt.
Oh, okay.
Let me look it up.
It's in the HTML as part of the image tag.
Yeah.
You can specify what text you want it to say as an alternative. Beverly's
Oh, yeah,
HTML.
ALT specifies
Yeah,
an
okay.
alternate text for an image.
So
Yes.
that,
I was just going to say, so yeah, today this morning before the meeting and everything, I was really struggling with testing some emails out of one of my solutions. And as I said, it arrived fine until I attached, a PDF invoice to it, and then it just never shows up. Or in some cases, like in Gmail, it goes to spam. In Hotmail, it doesn't show up at all. And I've been pulling my hair out for years on that, with the struggle with trying to keep things from going into the spam folder when it comes out of FileMaker. So that's a tough one.
I don't know if it's really a FileMaker issue though. I think it's on the receiving end that, it's the way it's set up.
So I run all my HTML emails through MailChimp to deliver. And then I never have any issues there. It was a bitch to set up, but actually I had somebody set it up and have no idea really how it works, but it works.
We use MailChimp for our newsletter. And it's, as we were talking about text earlier, they actually have a section where you can format the text version of your main template, and it does that too. But yeah, they're great because they keep track of all the spammers out there, and they keep everything legal, and so your stuff is more likely to reach its goal if you use a service like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've done
And
some-
sometimes it's the multiple emails that you send. If you send too many of the same subject, even if it's to different people or, same content, then they'll flag you and blacklist you as a sender. So
I was doing some research on that this morning and did see some comments, some posts, different places that were talking about using different third-party senders. And I guess what I was still trying to find out is can that all be connected through FileMaker, so my user doesn't have to leave FileMaker to go send an email, that it can be orchestrated right through the FileMaker solution?
The answer to that is basically yes. And the other thing to consider is if you have a relationship, for instance, I do some work with associations, and you're sending them individualized emails, and you're within Office 365 spam guidelines, fewer than 10,000 emails a day, fewer than 30 a minute, all individualized. As Beverly just noted, they can still flag you for spam because they get a little crazy. But it depends if you already have a relationship with the person that's receiving the email, right? Their particular browser that they're using, if it's accepted emails from that domain before that are HTML or whatever, chances are you can easily train it to receive emails from your new address, if that makes sense. You can do MailChimp only because that IP address is trusted by so many browsers, and you probably have history with it. But if you establish a history with your mail technique, and the association's relatively closed, in other words, you're not dealing with millions of anonymous people, you can get the emails through pretty directly. So
that's part of what we're running into, because my main client does phone sales, and so they'll make the sale and send off an email or an invoice to the customer, and if they never get the first one, then they're not going to get the subsequent ones either. So the salesperson is forced to kind of say, make sure you check your spam folder, which just seems hokey, so they're trying to they'd like me to find a solution for that. So that's what I'm working on. So
I just realized we switched to SMP to Go. If you see it down in here, and what this is this is using an outside source, and it's like MailChimp, but this is tied into FileMaker. So all my emails use this setup. So the attachments, everything else are going by them, and they're the ones that are trusted. And so out of 30,000 emails we sent last week, I got like 6 back bounced, because they give you a bounce report and everything else on which ones. It's usually a bad address or something. Even though we do verify the email, but still, if they type in their name wrong and they can't find account. So that might be a solution for you that'll really work, because then you just build it as part of your script. So instead of using your SMTP server, it uses this standardized one. And it's like for 10,000 emails a month, it's like $5. I mean, it's very inexpensive.
yeah, I'll definitely look into that one.
Yeah, you do have to set it up with your DNS though, because they have a couple things to set up. But once it's set up, I mean, we use the ton out of it.
Yeah, that sounds good, because the other concern too is in a use case that I'm working with, they want to be able to eventually do batch email invoices. So
Right.
again, want to be able to send out large numbers. Well, 1,200 to 1,500 a month in a batch, and be assured that they're going to get through as well. So
Yeah, but this way it looks like it does come from their domain and that type of stuff, even though it's using it some other service to do it.
Okay.
And that goes back into the bulk email notification that we talked about, are part of the core that we'll build. We'll actually get into this, but look into them, and that really has solved our problem. Because we used to have to manage all those bounces, and because of that, we used to get put on bounce list all the time. And since we've done this, it does not happen.
Fantastic.
And with that, I'm going to sort of stop from here, because next month, we'll actually start building on a core that I'll share with everybody in advance.
Sounds good. And I will make sure that I have the desktop sharing figured out one way or the other. So.
And Alan, I got to say that I think this is a really great idea. I mean, you're right. Some of it may be basic, but I mean, like your little trick or somebody's little trick of making sure that the one is unique so that you can't have more than one record in a file. Never thought of that. What a great idea. So you'll learn little tricks, even though it may seem like it's kind of basic. It's not. I think it's great. Good idea.
But that's a great example of productive computing shared it with me. And that's how we've been able to do our thing. I mean, that's what this whole community is all about.
Exactly. You were struggling for a word. You sort of said non-sharing, and I was wondering if proprietary is the word you were looking for, because a lot of people sort of say, that's mine. And I had a mentor many years ago says, you can go through life pinched and hard and trying to hold things together, or you can go through life kind of sharing and open and occasionally getting screwed, but you'll have a much better time and you'll learn a lot more. So yeah, here.
So would also like to thank Johnathan. Has he disappeared already?
Yeah, he ducked out, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
He
Well,
did.
just publicly, I wanted to thank him. I remember almost 20 years ago as a FileMaker employee, meeting them when they were getting this off the ground. And I said, first of all, call it a developers group. Secondly, meet during the day. And I got to give you guys credit. You took that advice, and you've been one of the few clubs that I've consistently stayed in touch with over the months, years, and now decades. So
yeah,
and hopefully we can keep that going. I know I love the fact that it's meets during the day, and I, for one, am a fan of the virtual platform, because I don't know if I'd ever made it up to Louisville, and especially not every month. So to be able to actually be connected virtually and through Zoom and all that stuff has just made it possible. And so I'm kind of a fan of how that turned out.
I will say it was pretty cool going to Louisville. That was fun.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say,
agree.
I always made it a trip where I allowed a little extra to explore some stuff I would not have otherwise. So
Yeah, me too, Beverly. I mean, it was it was
yeah,
basically a full day
it was
investment.
not wasted day by any means, just for the group.
And we have discussed, maybe doing a couple times a year, still doing in person, just to try and provide that in person.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, I wasn't lobbying for that, but there is something about, the beautiful old house that Alan had that we would all go and rattle around in. That was great.
Yeah, that was great.
wow.
Thank you, Alan, for doing that.
Yeah.
well, you're welcome. And hopefully in within a year, we'll have the new one in Columbia done.
Awesome.
We're converting a barn into a training center.
See, now that's an hour and a half away from me, so you'll see me. Not 3.5 hours.
There you go.
And Ron, we appreciate you stepping up and taking the leadership in this.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ron.
as I said, I just ask you to all bear with me, because I had hoped to one day be involved like this, but it's been thrust upon me pretty quickly, and it's actually been a little scary. But like I said,
You're among friends. Don't worry. Nobody's going to come and haunt you for messing up.
And as I said, I really do just view myself as a humble servant. I mean, I'm stepping up so that somebody can be here to keep the door open so the miracle can happen. So I don't make the miracle happen. I just keep the door open so that it can. So, that's kind of the view I have of it. But that being said, I'd like to kind of open up the topic of discussion a little bit to, what we've got coming up for the coming year, and along those lines, I'm going to need some help to find some presenters and figure out some people to bring in and some topics to discuss. So I'd really like to get some feedback on what you guys would like to see, or if anybody knows presenters that they've seen before that they'd like to maybe see here, or has some directions or some contacts to point me in the right direction, that would be great. A couple of the things that I had down that one of them we already touched on, like maybe something on emails and some better processes or concepts on even HTML email and things like that is something that personally I'm interested in. Data API and PHP web pages. I'm still on or not PHP, data API versus PHP. I'm still using a PHP API to do like an online payment page that's connected to a FileMaker database. And I'm wanting to switch over to data API and just trying to wrap my head around the basic setup of how do you set up a server. And so that's something I'd like to see as a topic. And I think Michael Lane he presented at Pause on Error. So I was thinking about maybe reaching out to him to come and do a presentation if that sounds like somebody y'all would like to hear from. So
I definitely, I'm deep in the weeds on data APIs right now and struggling. I mean, it's having to come up for air every once in a while. So I would hear on that topic, and maybe it's a separate topic, even though it's related. I'm going to have to tackle credit card processing pretty soon. So how do y'all do that? I haven't even dipped my toe in that water yet.
I actually have some solutions. I have some solutions I built out to use APIs to process through authorized.net and also through Stripe. I've written, so many of us, and me as well, have used the plastic plugin for many years.
Yes.
And one of the reasons for that was simply the fact that without the insert from URL, writing your own just wasn't possible.
Right.
It took a plugin. So since insert from URL had been introduced, that possibility is there. But I think a lot of people had been so comfortable, and plastic was a fantastic plugin and still is, and it's great. But I got to the point where I was just like, I was ready to write my own. So I wrote a couple myself. So yeah.
I mean, just as an example, you mentioned Stripe. You could do it with PayPal. You could do it with Square. I don't have an opinion about that,
Yeah.
One of the problems with plastic, that plugin though, it's not PCI compliant.
You have to be PCI compliant.
that's
That's why we had to stop using it.
Wow.
And it has really caused a lot of problems. A lot of solutions out there do not meet the PCI part of it. And since we deal with that all the time, like a department store, I mean, they do millions of dollars a month in credit card processing. I mean, how do we build it? So we had to come up with a different solution altogether without having us to be PCI compliant. And it's a nightmare.
Yeah, that's what I want. I don't want to have anything to do with having to be PCI compliant. I want, within my FileMaker solution, somebody to be able to say, yep, I'm ready to pay, and magic happens and it comes back and says, yep, they paid. That's what I need to know. I'm good.
Yeah, and I definitely have some things in place for that. And it'd be nice to see if I can find anybody else that have some other approaches, and we can open up a discussion on that one of these months.
Yeah, that's a good one. Because
we can advertise to community and some of the Slack channels that are out there, groups that are out there, saying we're looking for presenters, and we'll get some feedback on that. So
yeah, that would be great.
In the past, what we've pretty much done in looking for presenters, we would say, do you want to present? What are you going to talk on? We thought we would turn it around though. And this time we would say, here are the topics we need information on, and let's go find someone that can speak to these topics.
Yeah.
So we're sort of reversing it, and we're sort of giving Ron the charge of, okay, if we come up with the ideas, he'll just sort of coordinate it. We can't all rely on him to do it solely, but if he just coordinates the topics we want to talk about, and then say, okay, does anybody know anybody who can talk on this topic?
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe if we could add to this, I mean, this reminds me of something Johnathan did to me probably a year and a half ago or so. I knew a tiny little bit about JSON, And I realized what I knew was a thimbleful compared to what y'all know. But, you know, maybe it was helpful because a guy who doesn't know much said, well, here's what I've learned. And then you all went, well, did you know you could do all these things? And, you know, that was pretty exciting. So maybe one of the ground rules is it's okay to say, I know a little bit about that, and I'll sort of get the ball rolling, and then off we go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, JSON is a good one. JavaScript is always a good one. You know, and it's funny because one of the things recently for me that I just have felt so overwhelmed with is all of the different languages that we can incorporate with FileMaker and utilize, not just, you know, some are true programming languages, some are just data structure like JSON, but, you know, trying to wrap my head around, okay, I want to do this. Now I need to know how to do some PHP, you know, for doing a web payment page. Now I've got to be able to do curl. Now, you know, it's just that list grows and grows. And again, with the focus on trying to bring it back to some of the basics in the first half, one of the reasons for that is it seems like all the groups that you go to nowadays are all about all of that advanced stuff and other languages that a lot of people may not be ready to get into, but all of that stuff is always good. But I think the other thing with that too, that and from my personal opinion, what I found on some of the presenters that I've watched and you know, attended, like for instance, the data API one that I attended at Pause on Error. It was very informative, but there was a big kind of chunk that gets skipped over, which is the basics. Like, how do you set up a server? How do you, for me, I got stuck on the fact that, you know, I don't want to encode a username and password into the actual PHP text. So you're supposed to use environmental variables. Well, I have an AWS Windows server and, you know, but how do you set it up to be able to use environmental variables? I have no idea, you know, and so trying to, you know, cut through all the weeds to try and figure out how to just do the basics to set it up so that you can, you know, utilize the data API and tap the FileMaker database. A lot of times that kind of stuff gets glossed over. And then it's like, here's all this wonderful stuff we can do once it's set up. And it's like, okay, I can't get there though. So that was kind of where I was hoping to kind of keep it focused too. It very much is just, you know, let's basics of implementing.
This may be diving
Absolutely.
into too much detail, but I finally ended up having to write myself a little FileMaker app that would let me specify the URL and the curl, the you know, the payload, and test it. And, you know, like, nope, that didn't work. Well, what if I tweak this? Nope, that didn't work either. Tweak that, you know, but that little app has turned out to be, you know, just amazing because I can actually test things again and again and again until I find, oh, there it is. There's the magic combination. I'm still struggling with one right now that just doesn't work and I can't figure it out.
And that sounds like a tool that I'd like to have.
It ain't much, but it does work.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ron. There are a lot of pieces that are missing. And I've been doing this for, you know, I'm not going to tell you how many years I've had a computer,
Let's
but
just say that you have a hairstyle that says you are a certain age.
yeah. A long time. And when things are explained and they're really complex, a lot of those basics are missing. I did a presentation at the Atlanta group and FM Disk, which was just how to parse JSON, because that was a piece that was missing. We just say, here's what you do, here's what you do, here's what you do. And you go, yeah, but you haven't explained this very beginning bit. And if you haven't explained that very beginning bit, it's totally glossed over a lot of people's eyes. And after I did it, I had even partners come up to me and say, oh, thank you, because that was the piece that was missing in being able to understand what is this JSON stuff? What does this structure mean? Yeah, I have these wonderful, you know, functions that I can test, but I'm going to waste a lot of time testing it because I have no understanding of what the structure is. And so, I mean, for this group, I'll do that one again if you want.
Oh, absolutely. I think that would be fantastic. And, you know, you know, even for instance, JavaScript and stuff like that, like I struggled for so long just before I even came to the realization of, okay, you need to basically pull the JavaScript into your HTML text. And here are all these different ways to do it. Like I didn't have any understanding of that. And when people were demonstrating a JavaScript, you know, technique, it's all about all these great fancy bells and whistles that we've got it to do over, over here. But I'm going, well, can we reel it back to how we,
Yeah,
how we
exactly.
set it up to, because I think for most of us, I know for me, the joy is, once I get that thing set up, get that foundational understanding of how something works, then I'm free to explore all the crazy magical things I can make it do.
Yeah.
And I think we probably all do that, but trying to replicate somebody else's when I don't understand the foundation, I might be able to get that person's, somebody might present how to put a JavaScript graph into a layout or something, and I might get it in there and get it working, and then really have no idea how it works. And so I can't adjust it, I can't manipulate it. All I know is
Yeah.
how to put it in, and so
break it.
yeah, yeah. So
Totally agree.
yeah, so truly getting a good understanding of a lot of that stuff is, I think, really important. So
Has anybody used Claris Connect at all?
That was the subject of our last meeting with Andy Kanaski, who does the shipping program out of FileMaker. And he's a preferred vendor for Federal Express, UPS. And he's big time shipping. I would really look up their stuff, but he did a wonderful little Claris Connect demo and proved unequivocally that if you want to make money off of it as a developer, you can't.
You can't?
You cannot.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
To
too
your
funny.
point, Ron, earlier about APIs, since it took me so long to learn how to spell it, I gave up. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I would look at Kanaski's website up there.
NRG is.
NRG. He's
Yeah.
a great guy, been around FileMaker a long time.
Anybody have a link or something
Yeah, I'll
to
get
put
it
in
for you.
chat that I can?
He can converse with a wide range of people. Let's see, Cincy FM.
EnergySoft.com.
There you go. So just type in cincyfm.com and you'll see his bio and a link to his site as well.
Okay, I got it.
How do you spell API?
IPA. I'm a member of DAM.
There you go.
Others Against Dyslexia.
The only other thing I had on my list of suggested topics at some point is the data migration tool and some corresponding tools that go along with it. I currently use one from Productive Computing, which is fantastic, but I don't know, there's one from Geist Interactive, I think, where you can set it all up on the server. You click a button and it does it all for you, saves your clone, swaps it over to the server, does the data migration, closes it, opens it. I mean, like, does everything. Then
You talk about Otto?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's had any experience with that, but I think I was gonna.
I use the one out of Indianapolis's DB.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Martin, tell me again about your little database that you said was functional. You used it a lot for the figuring out things. Explain that again. I was distracted.
It's basically, I'm working on several data APIs in a big solution I'm working on. And I have to be able to reach out to several different APIs. By the way, the documentation about those APIs is varied. Some's quite good and some's like, what the heck are you talking about? But I found that I needed to have a way to be able to test, will this work? And so it essentially builds the URL, it builds the curl command, it executes the insert from URL, and then it grabs the result and displays it. And so you can say, let's try this. Does that work? Click. Nope. Let's try this. Does that work? Click. Nope. Let's try this. Does this work? Click. Yes. And it basically just stores each one of those runs so that you can say, there we go. That's the one. I need to, insert that into my solution.
I
Nothing
see. So
fancy.
you have the history of the build and the URL, so you can go back and look at it.
Yeah, I can say, I mean, when it turns out the history is not that important, because when you finally get the one that does work, then you go, there we go. I've got it.
True.
But yeah, that's
I like it. I like
it's
it.
nothing fancy. It really is nothing fancy at all. But it sure beats working in a solution and redoing the script and trying it, and the script doesn't work, and then redoing the script and it doesn't work, and so forth.
So Ron, I nominate Martin to do a little segment on that soon.
Yeah.
It sounds great.
Well, I mean, I could tell you what I'm working on and why it's important, and then and that'll be a great segue then, Ron, into the whole credit card thing, because that's kind of the next API I have to work on. Haven't even opened that door yet. That can of worms is still locked up tight.
Yeah, and
But
that varies so wildly as well, the difference between trying to work with, say, Stripe versus authorized.net. And now I have a need to try and do PayPal, which I'm sure is going to be a completely different animal as well.
Yeah, I actually sort of looked at the documentation on PayPal and thought, well, maybe I might be able to, I just don't know which way is the best way to go. So I'll offer up my thimbleful.
Yeah.
Brian, I can do that.
It's an amazing
just a little
kind of-
thimbleful, and you all can
cut
take it from there.
yourself short, as you said. That'll make an opening. So that's I think it sounds good.
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going with that. I'd like to see it.
It's an amazing
but-
kind of progression too. When before I tackled doing the authorized.net and Stripe, I just felt like there's no way I could ever figure that out until I just dove in and started pulling the pieces apart. And it was always like that couple of key aspects that once I understood that, and it would be, I'd be banging my head against the wall for 2 weeks until I finally just kind of something clicked and I understood that key aspect about how it works, and it just all starts to fall together after that. And so I actually started by doing the Stripe one, and once I did that and had great, was very successful in finally understanding how this stuff all comes together with APIs and curl and all that and JSON. And then so I went and tackled authorized.net, and that came together rather quickly compared to.
Well,
Okay.
and Ron, this I want to add to your list, or our list, and that is, I've heard in the FileMaker community that the Japanese market is one of the most vibrant. So let's get some
really?
Japanese. Oh yeah, they're like number one, maybe even. So they're massive. So let's get some presenters from Japan.
Okay. Do I get to fly over there? Does the group have an expense account? Can I?
We've actually had a couple
Well-
people attend from Japan.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, okay. Well, Ron, you know how much money I'm paying to be here.
Right. We might have to up your fee there, Brian, your membership fee.
Oh, I've got to reconsider then.
We'll double it. We'll double it. You can handle that, can't you?
Oh, okay. That'll be no problem.
Oh. Anybody else have any thoughts or suggestions on topics or things we'd like to explore, just so I can put some research into? Or does anybody have a suggestion for where to aim me for next month? What would we like to do next month? And don't know. I'm leaning towards pursuing the data API stuff. I at least have one contact I can reach out to and see if he'd be interested in presenting. And Michael Lane, as I said, I've seen him before, talked to him extensively, and I think he, I think there's a chance anyway. We'll see how much.
Yeah. That'd be a good one. And you'll get a draw from the rest of the community too, because even if they've seen it, some of those presentations I've seen, 3 different places, 3 different times, and I gleaned something different each time.
Yeah.
So, it's not like you go, oh, somebody else already did that somewhere else. Throw that out the door, because, they might come up with something totally different. The other one that's been really popular is that it's called JSON Query. Kevin Frank and and Steve works with beeswax, has done that a couple places, and that's just a custom function. But it's pretty cool in the way that it works in being able to extract your data out of JSON that hides all of the having to do your scripting and functions and all that. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
One other topic and kind of person that I thought to reach out to, and again, just going back to, and like you said, I mean, I'm going to be kind of trying to find some other groups to attend and see who's out there and who's presenting, and yeah, just because they presented at another group doesn't mean they can't present here, because I'm sure that's kind of how it works when somebody's got a presentation. But going back to pause on error, and this is more on the lighter side, there was a presentation done by a young lady, and it was all about, you know, it was playful stuff. It was about rotating like animated GIFs in messages, like error messages. Like an error message would come up and it would say, and instead of saying, you know, the basic error message, it would be some oops, you know, the building just exploded, and you'd have like a meme that would, or a animated GIF that would show an exploding building or something. And, you know, not that many of us would put something like that in one of our production solutions or anything, but just the whole concept of kind of coming up with some different ideas. And I thought the value of it for me was thinking about how many times my users get a pop-up and a message, a notification, and immediately dismiss it without ever even reading it. You know, I get that all the time, that people will just, so I'll do it in my own, you know, I'll run my own script in a pop-up and I'll dismiss it. And I'll be like, wait a minute, what was that error? So I think there's a value in that, you know, trying to draw the user's attention to the point of not having them just click through a message and not get the message. So something like that, I thought would be nice to do. It's not so much on the big technical end of things as much as it is on just kind of light and playful, and it's just built on some basics. So
Ron, that'd be great. But I think looking at this group, none of these people, including me, we don't make errors.
oh yeah.
No, yeah. Don't believe it.
Just kidding.
Yeah, it's definitely been a thorn in my side, the idea that, you know, people tell me something's going on in the app, like when a user is contacting me about a problem and I'm like, well, what did the error message tell you? And like, I don't know. So,
You know, you're right about that. When I see error messages come up, I usually chunk them away. I don't.
yeah. Well, and another
You know,
thing
I
that
mean-
came up in the same presentation, because it was something that she had as part of this little app she was working with, is a bug reporting system that allows, you know, capturing all of those environmental variables and including, you know, what the error message was. And even,
There you go. I was going to suggest something like that. Some kind of transaction logging. I mean, I know Alan does it, but
yeah,
what about, I mean, that's
I'm
really basic
big
stuff,
about
but it's important.
transactions.
yeah.
Martin, I am so big about transactions. I can tell you, I keep analytics that are unbelievable in my apps.
So Ron, just let
I
him
can-
talk for a few minutes and then you can just, you know, hook him and you got him. Okay.
There you go. There you go.
No, we've got several online order systems that I wrote, and I can tell you the average time that it takes somebody to process an order. We have people that can do orders in 22 seconds, a complete order.
Wow.
I didn't know you could even do that in the system. And there's like 13 people that have done it. And and I went to look and they have a real order in there. They're just this way. I can tell you the average time. I can tell you. And then when I'm kind of trapping things, I want to know when they click on something, I'll get an email alert when they do that. So, and then I get rid of that after I see that it's successful.
Yeah. Well, I know
that's kind of fun.
The bug reporting thing for me, I have just many users with my main client that, which was my employer and kind of still is. We're making that transition. That was, you know, where I spent my years of developing before a couple of years ago, deciding to start branching out to go freelance. But all of those users, some, 25, 30 users have direct contact with me in Slack. And so when they have a problem, they just type it in Slack. But the problem is that usually it's just, it won't let me.
Yeah.
I have no idea where they are in the system, what they're trying to do. It won't let me print
It won't let me.
And so I have to spend the first part of the conversation gleaning all of that necessary information that I need just to get logged in and get to where they're at to find out what's not working. So yeah, I'd love to have a bug reporting system like that just, and one that we kind of bounced around at that presentation that I saw her at and everything was just, when that error message comes up, actually having the ability to take a screenshot from there and then log it as an error report. And
I've heard of people doing that.
yeah, so she had some really neat ideas on those lines as well. So that's somebody.
That's good.
Yeah. But, yeah. Speaking of users and user support and stuff like that, it was really funny because something that, and I keep going back to Pause on Error because I attended, and it's the second FileMaker event I've been to. I went to a DevCon a few years ago, and then I went to Pause on Error this year, and it was just an amazing experience. But we had one of the little small groups where we just kind of had a discussion about some things. And one of the things that kind of came up was that, users having direct access to me as a developer, and sometimes they're so quick to be like, it won't let me. And then there are certain users that I found, if I give them a minute, they'll figure it out. And so we kind of posed this question: is if we're attending to that user too quickly, are we taking away their ability to use deductive reasoning or use critical thinking? If we're jumping on it too quick. And one of the guys that was there just last week texted me and said he had a similar experience, and he thought of that group and having that discussion where he couldn't get to a user right away, and by the time he got to that user, they had figured it out. So
Yeah, I used to tell my clients, or have a voicemail that said, if this is an emergency, call 911.
yeah.
If not, leave me a detailed message or email me, and I will try to get back to you. Because they'd love to call me in the middle of one of the dev cons,
Yeah.
I told you like 3 months ago I'd be gone for a week. And if it's not an emergency, don't call me.
I've kind of gotten stuck in this relationship with the company and with the users where, they'll call me on the weekends. They'll message me, at 6 o'clock in the morning or at 8 o'clock at night. And I'm like, look, I'm not working right now. You may be, but I'm not. And if it's crucial, if the system's crashing or something like that, yeah, of course I'm going to jump on it. But if it's just a small glitch that they can get by and I can work on tomorrow. So it's a little unnerving sometimes when they're, when they expect you to be at so accessible, and it's just the drawback of the situation. But
Well, I think it was a good first month.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, I'm just here to serve, so I'll do the best I can and try and keep the door open.
Ron, don't worry. I'll have a little private talk with that former person that was
Oh,
in your
okay.
place, and I'll tell him he needs to act like presidents and just be this way. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it was funny because I actually had to go out of town last week for 3 days. I had to fly down to Louisiana for a client, and so we were coming up to this group, and like I just was away. I'm just so busy, and then I guess it was Friday or something. Johnathan was like, or Alan had emailed saying, "Are we ready for this group?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I kind of forgot about that." Reached out to Johnathan, and I was kind of like, well, I was kind of hoping maybe you'd take this one and I would just kind of start the learning process. And he said, well, I was going to just skip it if that was the case. And I was like, no. I'll do it. So yeah, Johnathan has basically just pushed me off the cliff and said, you're in. So
But you haven't hit Bob.
yeah, so I'm sorry.
That's what we did to him.
Yeah.
You're it.
Yeah, you're it. So I will do the best I can. It was already so intimidating trying to write the announcement because I looked back on several months of his announcements, and the man can write. He's got a great flair for writing those announcements. And I'm like,
He does.
I am going to be so disappointing compared to him.
It's okay.
So, but I guess it's either me or no one at all. So I guess it'll be me.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
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 Doing a good job. Good first time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
I was awarded the position by default. So, but to be honest with you, as I said, you know, attending the group, and I actually have a working relationship with Johnathan that came from this group, as far as, you know, we met through this group, and he reached out to me on a project to work on with him. And so we have a working relationship, and just being involved with this group, like I really had dreamed, you know, maybe a few years from now of doing what I'm doing now. So it's kind of it's a real neat opportunity. I just, because this is where I'm hoping my FileMaker, you know, career goes, is just being so much more involved in the community. I was kind of developing for years in a bubble. You know, for over a decade working for my employer. I mean, I knew about everybody out there because I was on the forums, and I was, you know, out there reading what everybody was doing, and I posted some questions from time to time, but I had no real contact with any other developers. So it's just been the last couple of years, and so much of it through this group, that I've actually been able to start actually interacting with other developers. And I really want to, you know, keep that moving forward and make that a big part of my existence in the FileMaker world, is just being part of the FileMaker community. Well, I think we're right about at the end here. So thank you guys for dropping in.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Ron. Good job.
Thank you, Alan.
We'll hopefully see y'all next month, and I'll see what I can put together for next month.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Everybody have a great day.